Julianne is possessed. Her best friend Michael is getting married. They relied on each other to get through early adulthood, and though she hasn't pounced on him since college, they haven't talked in months, and the role of her best friend has been wavering towards George, Jules can't quite let go of her Michael. Now that the traveling sports writer is ready to tie the knot with Kimmy, a junior at the University of Chicago, Julianne does everything in her power to keep the nuptials from coming to pass. Because this was made in the 90s, Jules is a successful career woman who's really not into PDA and isn't very forthcoming with her feelings, especially those concerning matters of the heart. Kimmy is the exact opposite. She very openly expresses her emotions despite her conservative fashion sense and is ready to drop her senior year of architecture school to follow Michael around in the low-paid, dead-end sports journalism job that he so loves. Kimmy asks Julianne to be her maid of honor for plot reasons, so the happy couple take her to get fitted for a dress 3 days before the wedding, an expense among many others that is rather niftily explained away by Kim's dad being a billionaire. You know, because it's a rom-com and financial security is a tenet of the genre. So Jules is changing out of the dress, and, as it is a comedy with romantic elements, the obligatory woman half-naked in her choni scene plays out, where Michael makes some flirty comments about his best friend's body, and she therefore comes to the conclusion that she still has a shot with him, as long as she can successfully remove his fiancée from the picture. Jules' first plan of attack is to expound upon Michael's compendium of flaws, to which Kimmy eagerly contributes. Unfortunately for our protagonist, the girls bond over the symphonic range of Michael's snoring, after which Kimmy thoughtfully states,
I threw the list away. He's not a balance sheet. He's Michael, and loving him means loving all of him.
After spending some time with her little Eskimo sister, Jules discovers that she can't carry a tune, and so goes in for a second bout. She sets Kimmy up to have a miserable time at karaoke, one of Michael's favorite pastimes. Her performance starts off shy and strangled. People are booing, and Michael is looking at her all flabbergasted. But once the second verse hits, the magic of Burt Bacharach's music and Hal David's lyrics give Kimmy the confidence and awkward charisma to not just win over Michael and the audience, but Julianne herself. And Jules finds this really annoying. Her enemy is eminently likable. The girl's charming, but has relatable flaws. She truly understands Michael, both the good and the bad, and loves him enough to set aside her dream of becoming an architect, or so she says. Gleaning a rather vulnerable chink in the happy couple's armor, our career woman protagonist sets out to collapse the man and wife-to-be under the weight of girl boss feminism. She coerces Kimmy into asking her billionaire dad, who happens to own a sports broadcasting company, to open up a position for Michael so that he doesn't have to travel for work. Jules says to frame it as Michael doing a favor for her father, and while she correctly predicted that her bestie would get pissed about a subject that the couple had apparently already settled, LOL, Julianne was not quite attuned to Kimmy's commitment and willingness to sacrifice.
This wasn't fair. You have to forgive me and forget this ever happened, okay? Or I'll just die.
Jules ropes George in to co-star in her next act of sabotage. She and her gay BFF pretend to be engaged so as to induce jealousy from Michael. And wouldn't you know, it works. He admits to his envy and then asks Jules to spend the afternoon with him. As we enjoy this architectural boat tour of Chi-Town, the best friends talk about what their relationship means to each other and how it'll probably change moving forward. And then Michael parrots a sentiment from his fiancée.
Kimmy says if you love someone, you say it. You say it right then, out loud. Otherwise, the moment just
Passes you by.
passes you by.
Jules' final scheme involves writing an email as Kimmy's dad. She addresses a draft to Michael's current place of employment and asks his boss to fire him so that he would have no choice but to come into the fold of the billionaire's company. The email accidentally gets sent out because apparently people used to save drafts of their business correspondence so that their administrative staff could have the honor of pressing send at lunchtime. And then Michael, he manages to get same-day analog correspondence, a warning from his boss about the family he's marrying into. And here, Jules finally has him. Michael loves his traveling sports job, and Kimmy is denying her father's involvement in the email, calling Michael crazy and paranoid. There's no way the bride and groom could possibly recover from such an incident. They're both in the right, and they're both acting like lunatics. In a state of sadness, Michael calls off the wedding and wanders off from his best friend's hotel room. The next morning, Jules gets an ugly wake-up call. Kimmy never told her parents about the breakup, and Michael plans to confront her family about their actions. Except that's a bit of a lie. Even though Jules plays both sides of the aisle, Kimmy admits to loving Michael despite his paranoia, and Michael is actually willing to forgive her family's alleged slight against his career. And so, after having tremendously failed to fracture their relationship time and again, Jules finally decides to do what George has been emphatically imploring this entire time. I really like those glasses. She finally shoots her shot, telling Michael how she feels about him and kissing him in the gazebo. But then Kimmy catches them in the act, and a chase scene set to one of the best songs of all time ever ensues.
If you want to know what the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Sorry, is it obvious that this is a very nostalgic watch for me? And then a chase scene ensues.
Michael's chasing Kimmy.
Yes!
You're chasing Michael.
Yes!
Who's chasing you? Nobody. Get it?
There's your answer, Kimmy.
No!
Yes! Jules, you are not the one!
And that's basically this film in a nutshell. There are a lot of moments where Jules makes eyes at Michael, but he only ever reciprocates with guy friend energy. There's a night and day difference between the way he looks at Kimmy and the way he looks at Jules. And yeah, he admits to a bit of jealousy when George is around, but if he truly had any latent, hardcore romantic feelings for his best friend, they would have cooked up a little something-something at the hotel. When he breaks it off with Kimmy, Michael doesn't turn to Jules for emotional comfort. He goes out to think and wander around alone. And back to the chonies scene, this is where Jules thinks she has a legitimate chance with Michael. But honestly, this comes off more as, oh, I found you in a compromising position, so I'm gonna make some flirty, teasing comments about how you're still hot, but we're man/woman besties who don't have healthy boundaries about this stuff, and while I am a red-blooded dude of the heterosexual persuasion, yes, I still find you attractive, I'm getting married, like, tomorrow, so LOL, JK, haha. And while Jules is driven by her crazed and jealous insecurity, all of her Machiavellian scheming is based on the actual trouble areas of Michael and Kimmy's relationship. Everything that the maid of honor/honorary best man does genuinely helps and solidifies the happy couple's relationship. Julianne tries to ward off Kimmy with Michael's idiosyncrasies. Doesn't work. She's surprisingly mature about accepting him, flaws and all. With the karaoke, Jules was counting on the bride to be closed-minded and spoil one of the groom's favorite activities. Instead, Kimmy proves herself to be resilient and open to trying things that terrify her. On the very contentious subject of whether Michael should give up his treasured sports gig or whether Kimmy should abandon her education, by the end of the movie, they're both willing to compromise. Kimmy's happy to put off school for a time, but she does mention that, prior to Julianne's involvement, she and her father had talked about onboarding Michael to his company. At the end of the day, she wants to be with Michael, but she wants to pursue her dreams at some point too. And let's be real, traveling sports journalist is a great job for a young bachelor, but it is not an appropriate long-term career for someone who wants to do the marriage and family thing. In his willingness to forgive Kimmy and her father for the falsified email, Michael is acknowledging that sometime down the road, eventually he's going to need to give up this job to be with her, even though it's a massive part of his identity. But the biggest test of all is to determine whether or not Michael and Julianne's feelings of crush-like lust plus intimate emotional connection equal a long-term committed relationship. Kimmy admits that the reason she wanted to get close to Jules was to see if she was a threat. Everyone is vitally aware of how important Jules is in Michael's life.
He's got you on a pedestal. And me in his arms.
Oh, my God, it's the bride and the woman she'll never live up to.
You've sort of been, the woman in my life.
You've been the man in mine.
As previously stated, it's clear that Michael doesn't see Julianne as marriage material, and I'm not entirely convinced that she sees him that way either. In their younger and more vulnerable days, the besties made a blood pact to marry at 28 if neither of them had found anyone. All of a sudden, Jules realizes that they're 27, and the timeline cutoff for this little fantasy is right around the corner. Now look, I don't doubt that Jules loves Michael as much as she proclaims. They've had a strong emotional connection for about a decade. That's how love works. But by the time Michael invites her to the wedding, it's been months since they've spoken. Their relationship is already on a bit of a wane, and in all that time as friends, he never pursued her, and she never pursued him. Between attempts at destroying his relationship, Jules tries to convince Michael that she's a different person, a changed person, someone who's into all that icky love stuff, all the stuff Kimmy seems super comfortable with. But if that were actually true, she wouldn't keep letting the opportunity to express her love to him pass by. Michael's marriage represents an end to their late-night tipsy conversations, an end to their plane-hopping adventures, an end to an era. Realistically, the pair are never going to be that close again. This film isn't about Jules clinging to some harebrained romantic conquest. It's about her having to emotionally let go of her best friend. When Michael says goodbye, it's a definitive signal that she must move on. And it's really not so bad. These days, George has been taking over the best friend role, and he's pretty good at it. He doles out excellent advice and is there for Jules when she needs to lick her wounds. Plus, he's charming, saucy, and fun. The gay best friend stereotype catches flack these days, but George is enough of his own person that I can forgive the following awkward and gauche yet well-meaning for its time dialogue.
He's like you, actually, only straight.
It sounded like George was gay.
And although you quite correctly sense that he is,
George is in a stable and loving relationship with his off-screen partner, Werner, whose family is having some sort of event in the Hamptons that Jules drags him away from. She borrows his ring, suggesting that the couple have had at least a civil ceremony, and George fully has his own life and friends outside of the maniacal redhead. She interrupts both a dinner party and a reading from, presumably, one of his authors. When Jules wrangles him into pretending to be her fiancé, George loathes getting pushed in the closet, and so retaliates by humiliating her as much as humanly possible in the very public eye of Kimmy's huge family. This is the definition of a great friend. Someone who will put up with your demeaning shenanigans while taking as many pot shots at you as possible. Support with accountability. Get some. It's also noteworthy that he's the only person who gets a recurring musical theme. That the characters are diegetically singing back-rack tunes qualifies this film as a jukebox musical. George gets the very impressive leitmotif of I Say a Little Prayer, first singing it to humiliate Jules / challenge her fear of PDA at the crab luncheon, and then when the band plays it at the end of the movie as he cements his presence in her life as her best friend. And that's the thing here. Jules holds all this nostalgic love for Michael while manifesting these fun and ridiculous moments with George. The reality of the situation is that she had already moved on from Michael. She just needed some time to emotionally process and accept it. Besides, dancing with George is no consolation prize. Anyway, feel free to break up my current and future engagements in the comments. Bye.